Hi, and welcome back to part 2 of the AnyRPG 0.8a release livestream. In the first half of the livestream, we played through half of the new content and all of the old content, along with the improvements to it, and focused on a lot of the new features that came with the 0.8a release of the AnyRPG Engine. In this episode, we will be continuing the adventure from where we left off. So if you missed the first part of the live stream, we learned in our quests about the mana seal.
A large well called the Mana Seal was built to contain the collected mana.
And we were sent out on a quest to discover if the mana seal was still functioning. We will be using version 0.8.1 alpha for this stream, and I would highly recommend if you have 0.8 alpha that you upgrade, as there was a bug in the questing system that prevented the main story quest from being completable. So you can find that at anyrpg.org/downloads. Let's go ahead and just pick up right where we left off. So I will load up my AnyRPG 0.8.1a demo character, which I've created for this, and got him basically to the exact same spot where we were at the end of the last part of the demo. We have traveled to the Sun Temple, and we're about to head to Light Fury Outpost to try to find the Light Guard and determine if the mana seal is still functioning. When we reach Light Fury Outpost, we find a dead commander and a bunch of dead guards. Looking at the commander, it is badly burned, and it's been burned so hot that it's made of glass now, and nothing around seems to be burnt. So we should go investigate. And we will head over, and we find a guard over here, and when we talk to it, we find he's got a hole in his chest where the heart should be, and it's singed around the edges as if a very hot object passed through him. And heading over to this other hut here, we see a second dead guard, and this guard has a white hand symbol on his chest. None of the others have this symbol, so our character doesn't know, is this some sort of trophy? And over here we find the final dead guard, who has a map covered in blood beside him that shows something in the middle of the desert. We'll go back to our dead commander here and turn in our quest and get the new quest to go follow the map and investigate the mana seal if we can find it. Travel out to the desert, we find ourselves at the mana seal, and I'm just going to hop on my dragon here to make this go a little bit quicker. And we find a discharged Lunamech lying on the ground, and it's full of the same type of holes as we found in the guard at the outpost, and it appears to be missing its partner. Investigating more, we find another discharged Lunamech, and it's collapsed on the ground because it has no power left. Continuing, we'll find another discharged Lunamech, and it is covered in dust and has clearly been offline for quite some time. The mana well itself appears to be completely empty, and none of the mirrors which would keep the shield up are operating. So we find that this sun focus here, which isn't operating, is connected to some underground machinery and are sent to go investigate it. We find one more Lunamech that looks like it got in a fight with something and has many battle scars right beside a door to the underground temple. And we'll enter the newest dungeon in Chapter 2 of A Lost Soul. the Temple of Ancient Energy. Here in the Temple of Ancient Energy, you can see one of the new features of 0.8 alpha is this range indicator. If I am selecting a target and I'm able to cast on that target, then all of the numbers will be white and they turn red as soon as I can't cast on them. So because this spell has a range of 40 meters, you can see that its indicator isn't red, and these ones have a lower range, and so their indicators are red. As I move into range, you can see that they turn white, which indicates that I can now cast on this unit. If I target a friendly unit, then the indicators will turn red for attack abilities if I can't cast them on friendly units. So we're just going to blind this guy and take him out. He's an ancient mummy. And we have some pretty decent gear that just dropped off of him. A couple of new recipes and a pretty powerful health potion. And we will continue on and take out the rest of these mummies, and we will get to the first room in the dungeon that is a puzzle room, as this dungeon is a puzzle dungeon, and I wanted to have the ability to have sort of just a fun way to design a dungeon that wasn't just all about fighting. And so I was inspired by earlier versions of Legend of Zelda games, the way you have to solve puzzles in dungeons, and I wanted to be able to give the user that type of experience with this dungeon. So there's a couple of new features in here, and one of them now is movable objects, and another is environmental effect areas. You can see down below we've got some little green clouds here, and if we fall down into these green clouds, we'll actually start taking environmental damage. And so you could use this for like deep water or lava or anything like that. If we click this button right here, it'll actually activate a platform that will raise us up off the ground. And although this isn't necessarily a new feature of the engine itself, if you look at the platform, you can see that we're using a new Unity, a Unity component called a nav mesh. Let me just zoom in on my player here, and we'll set it to navigation. And here we go. So in general, a mob won't be able to get to anything that, won't be able to path outside of the navigation mesh unless there's a way for him to do it. And since navigation meshes are baked into levels, then one way to get around that is to actually use a Unity component called a, let me just find it here, nav mesh surface. So we have a nav mesh surface that we actually bake right onto this prefab, and then we've got this nav mesh links here that allows a jump between the two nav meshes. And so what this means now is that I can actually go aggro a unit over there, and then he will come over as close to me as he can, but he will stop because he won't be able to get to me, and if I activate the bridge, then the nav mesh links will come up and he'll actually be able to jump over to me. So why don't we go ahead and do that? I'm going to go aggro him, and you'll see he's going to try to come over, but of course he can't get over to me. And then I'm just going to click that button down there, and then as soon as the platform is in range, you see that little jump that he sort of does, and that jump is him sort of jumping across that nav mesh link to follow me. So this is great because, you know, as soon as I raise the bridge up, then I'm vulnerable to attack, and I can sort of choose when I want to start the fight. Similarly, we've got these interactables here, which are the control switches, and these bridges are basically the exact same thing as the doors in the Sun Temple level from the last episode. It's just a movable object that we can move between two positions. So we'll click this one over here and get that bridge up. And then finally we can go over to this button over here and get the last bridge up. And then now we can actually escape the room here. In this room, we'll see another new feature, and that is pressure switches. So at the far end of the room, there are two boxes, and we're actually going to have to move those boxes in order to activate a door so that we can make it out of this room. Another feature in this version is poison removal, and to do that I actually have to find an ancient spider, so hopefully we have one. Perfect. There's a spider in the next room that I can aggro, and actually let's just aggro him now so I can demonstrate this. So what the spider is going to do is he's going to come up and he's going to attack me, and he should poison me. Perfect. So I have a spider venom dot on me now, and we'll kill the spider here, and I'm gonna continue to take damage from the spider venom. But if I eat these ancient herbs that I just picked up, then it will actually clear the effect. And this is a new feature of this engine. What happens is we designated that effect as a harmful effect, and we set its type to poison. And then the ancient herb actually has a new type of ability effect called a clear effect, and it's able to clear poison. And we can define that for anything. We can define poison or venom or anything that we want. So now you can have things like, for example, in World of Warcraft, they had a loofah that would clear bleed effects, and we're capable of doing that sort of thing. Right here, we're looking at another new feature. It's a pressure switch. This block right here that we're pushing around has a rigid body on it, and the rigid body has a weight of, I don't know, 25 or 50 kilograms or something like that. And so we have this new feature called a control switch group. And what that means is that these two switches are linked together with the door. And so in order for that door to activate, both of these switches have to be in the on position. And my character is actually heavy enough to activate it. And this is another new feature, is mid-level cutscenes that we're looking at here, where we can actually do a cutscene mid-level without loading another level. But you can see that as soon as my character moves off of the door, it's going to close again. We'll get the cutscene back because there isn't enough weight on it. So if I want that door to remain open and I can actually head over there and walk through it, then I'm going to have to push this block over here onto the door. So let's go ahead and do that. And I should organize my bags here because I think I got a couple of more drops. And a bunch of these are from the ancient gear set, and this is something else that I wanted to demonstrate. We have some new recolors included with the engine. So we now have a yellow recolor, and this is what's going to be dropping in the dungeon. Hey, yeah, that's a great question, Hand Avatar. So the blocks can technically probably get stuck if they get pushed into a corner, although just because of the way the physics works, if you hit them hard enough, you would probably actually bounce them out of the corner. Very likely, because I think like if I hit them into a wall, I can sort of spin myself around, and it just, you'll eventually end up bouncing them out, I think. here's an interesting thing about the blocks. This is another neat feature. Let's actually save this, and as part of the persistent object feature, we can actually exit the game, and these blocks will actually go back into the same position that they were in when we reload the game. And this is happening through a new persistent object save system that applies UUID. So when you come back into the dungeon, if you've already solved the puzzle, it'll just remain open and you're not going to have to go through all of the trouble of reopening everything. So you can see I appear back in the room here. This block is already sitting over there, and this block is right here. Similarly, let's actually make the door open here for a second, and you can see the door is open. We're just going to save the game and exit right now, and then we're going to hop back in. All right, there we go. And the door automatically opened because the blocks were in the right place and they activated those pressure switches. So let's just actually take a look at that real quick and see how that is working. So if we look at, we'll find one of the door here. So we're looking at an idle door switch. And here you can see that this switch is controlling basically 3 objects, and this is actually how the cutscene is working. So yes, the enemies will attack you mid-cutscene. It's actually kind of funny. I've had that happen before. They can actually kill you while the cutscene is happening. For sure. Yeah, I know in the future when you're watching a cutscene, it should like make your character unattackable and put like a little video sign over his head or something. So the door here, the way that it's working is basically the control switch for the door is controlling 3 things independently. It's going to take the top part of the door and animate that because that part animates upward, the bottom part of the door and animate down, and then it's going to basically activate a timeline controller as well. And that timeline controller is the Unity timeline that activates the cutscene. It's part of a switch group, which basically means that both of these switches have to be in the on position in order for this switch to activate here. And when we look at the blocks here, we've got this block switch 1. No, that's not what we want. We want, let me just find my character here and I'll click on the block because we want one of these movable ones that he just put on the ground here. There we go. Pushable idle right here. So the idle is working using a persistent object script, and what happens is whenever the game is saved or the level is unloaded, this thing will automatically save its position, and it uses this pretty cool UUID script that I found online, and this UUID script basically generates a almost guaranteed to be unique UUID for every object in the level, and then it basically saves that information, and when the level loads, then the script will just reset the rotation and transform position values to whatever they were saved under that UUID. Let's keep going. We're going to look at another new way to use the switch groups, and that's actually with weights requirements. So oh, if you think this thing is speedrunner proof, you're gonna laugh when you see the final boss. It is like I made it so you can't cheese the final. Well, you can cheese the final boss, but you can't cheese the time of the fight. Like for example, in Crystal Mine, you could basically just resurrect every single pet and one-shot the final boss because you'd have like 8 pets, for example. This is totally not going to be possible with this final boss. He is totally awesome. And he actually has a lot of new mechanics that we've added into the engine as well, a lot of really fun mechanics. So we'll be there in a second. We're actually 1 room away from the final boss room. So the switches in this room, if you notice, this one on the floor is a square one, and that other one over there is a circular one. And if we were to just push any old box onto these, it won't work because these switches actually have a weight requirement. So right now, this circular one has a weight requirement of 25 kilograms. So I have to push this block on it because it's a 25 kilogram block. And if I were to push another circular one over onto that one over there, onto the box, it wouldn't activate it because that switch has a requirement of 50 kilograms. So when we push this square one, because it's 50 kilograms, then the switch activates, we get our cutscene, and our animated objects are basically opening up, and now we can head in to the final boss fight. So let's just see, we got a little more loot here. This was a recipe. Okay. And we're just going to take out this mummy here. Alright, great. So now we are ready to go take on the final boss, and when we pop in close enough here, we're going to get another mid-level cutscene, and he's going to blow up these controls using a new feature, and that is Unity explosions. So that control box over there actually had a rigid body on it, and when we got within range, that triggered the boss to spawn and attack that thing and cause a Unity explosion force which acted on the rigid body and will act on the character as well. Now, in this fight, if we select the boss, you'll see that he doesn't have a green health bar, and that's because of the new character stat system where health is just a definable resource like mana or anything else. So lunar mechs, because they recharge from the sun, they actually rely on something called solar energy, and solar energy isn't health, which means that you actually can't damage him, because when my abilities attempt to do damage, they're actually going to look for a resource called health, which means because he's a robot, essentially he's immune to all damage. So he's going to shoot these lasers at me, and I'm going to just hit him with a dot here. I can blind him, but if I try to do like a channel venom or anything else, he's going to blow me up. And because that block is 1,000 kilograms and I'm only like 50 kilograms, then I'm going to absolutely go flying through the air. And you can see basically some immunity stuff popping up there. If I just stand here and attack him, you know, you can see he's immune, and wow, I'm almost dead now, so I better do something about that. This fight with his boss uses line of sight mechanics. And so you can see that the boss is going to try to follow me and get in line of sight of me in order to attack me. And you'll notice that even though I'm standing inside of the explosion, the red explosion right now, I'm not really taking damage. And the reason is because what's happening is his laser is actually targeting the ground where that small red dot is there. And as long as I'm out of line of sight of that dot, I'm actually not going to get hit by the explosion. And you can also see basically that every time he casts this, his life is dropping by 5%. So what's happening is basically he's shooting a laser, but that laser is using up his energy, which is also his life force. So this entire fight is all about basically just line of sight. And you can see that basically if he shoots me and I'm outside of the range of that, I'm going to take a little bit of damage, but I'm not going to go flying. But if I'm right inside, it's going to just send me flying across like the entire level here. And the explosion radius is about 15 yards, so under normal circumstances, no matter how fast I run, I'm pretty much going to take damage on this fight here. And basically, it kind of makes it impossible to speedrun the fight, because there's no way for you to kill this guy any faster than he kills himself just by firing on you. So the quickest way to actually win this fight is to actually just play it exactly the way it's supposed to be played, and just use line of sight mechanics to get him to cast every time he can. He's finally exhausted all of his energy, and we see that he's got this giant white hand symbol on his chest, just like the guard did. So what's that all about? Well, let's go find out. We found the mana seal controls. These are what are controlling that sun focus on top, but unfortunately, let's see what happened here. The controls have been completely destroyed by the hostile Luna mech. All the Luna mechs are either destroyed or disabled and can no longer charge the sun shield. The mana seal is empty and all the contained mana is missing. All of the light guard knights are dead. And the hostile Luna mech had the same white hand marks on it as the dead guard with the map at Light Fury Outpost. Maybe this is a clue. Let's report back to High Priestess Luminessa at the Sun Temple and let her know what's transpired. I'll go to High Priestess Luminessa now. What a mystery. Who is this mysterious white hand? So we'll teleport back to the full Soul Forge here, and here we'll actually see a new feature of the engine as well, and that is the fact that all of these crystals have appeared, and anything that's spawnable in the game now can basically have visiting a zone as a prerequisite. So what happened is when I visited the Mana Seal, it automatically unlocked this crystal here. And when I visited the Crystal Mine, it unlocked that one. When I visited Light Fury Outpost, it unlocked that one. And when I visited the Sun Temple, it unlocked the Sun Temple at the back. So basically, I don't have to go all the way through Birch Grove now. And this is just a really easy way for you to make dynamic content without having to do a lot of work. You could just set any of these things to say, you know, you visited a zone, it's unlocked. Oh, the piggyback by the red man. Okay, so basically I don't have any redistributable four-legged animals that I can include with the engine at all that are animated. And so rather than just having your character like float in midair or ride on top of a ball or something like that, I just made an Uma guy into the mount. This is actually supposed to be a red dragon. If you look at one of the gameplay playlists here, it's this one right here. You can actually see the red dragon right here, and this is the one that you'll win, and you'll get to ride around here. And I wish I could redistribute this, but I can't, so unfortunately I just substituted him with an Uma red guy. I know it looks kind of hilarious. If you know anyone who has like any four-legged critters that they could donate to the engine though, that I could redistribute, that would be absolutely amazing. So we're going to head back to the High Priestess here. Yeah, and it's you know, I'm like a pharaoh, right? I get to ride on the back of my guys. I got like this ancient yellow robe that I got. So getting back to here, we complete our quest, and that is the end of A Lost Soul Chapter 2 content. And that's basically all of the new features in AnyRPG Engine 0.8 Alpha, or well, more specifically 0.8.1, because 0.8 had a bug in it. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, don't forget to thumbs up the video, subscribe to the AnyRPG channel, or just leave a note in the comments. Okay, to answer that last question, yeah, so basically, the dragon is a download from the Unity asset store, and you have the right to include it in your game, but you don't have the right to redistribute it. And since the engine is literally a Unity package where you've got direct access to all of the assets, and it's not like encrypted or anything like that, then I can't redistribute anything that I don't own or anything that wasn't like I wasn't given permission to, you know, like the audio files, right? So yeah. Anyway, cool. I'll be back on Discord in a minute, and I'll be recording one of the Invector demos hopefully pretty soon, showing how to set up the Invector controller with this new version, because Invector support is now built into the engine. So take care, and I will see you in the next video.